Right, I wasted more money on a video game because it's on sale, but I've been wanting this one for a long time. Um, just because it's just because it's sort of a museum of a true artiste. Um, Jeff Mentor, British video game designer. Um, First came under my radar because he designed a whole bunch of stuff for the Atari Jaguar. But he's just a truly unique voice in the world of video games. And this is a Digital Eclipse release, so I love Digital Eclipse. Everything they do is solid gold, so today was the last day of the sale. I've been wanting to pick this up, so I decided I'd pick it up. See this introduction to Jeff Mentor.
I can't think of Jeff Minter without the word legend in my head. He's been around the industry for many years and still makes artful games that have influenced a great number of people.
I always found Jeff and his games fascinating because, you know, Jeff was so distinct and he's just so unlike anyone else. And he's one of the true originals, like one of the true iconoclasts in gaming. Like there's no one else like him. Like if Jeff didn't exist, you'd have to invent him, right? Because someone has to be that guy.
There aren't enough people like Jeff. He is in his things. What he makes is him. What makes Jeff stand out, and what for me was the whole point of the artistry when I was younger, was this notion that it's you in the thing. It is an extension of you. It is a part of you. It is part of your character, your personality.
What he's making is stuff he makes out of love, and that's always been present in everything that he does. I think that's just one of the things that makes the games lovely, that makes the games are so integral to Jeff, and Jeff is so integral to the games.
Obviously, I was a big fan of Jeff from the 80s. I think he was one of the main reasons I got a Commodore 64 after having a Spectrum. After
Specky, eh?
Deep in Space and Revenge of the Mutant Camels. I thought, oh hello, this is interesting.
It was this lifestyle, cultural choice that he'd made, which was so different to everyone else. Everyone else was just a company or a product, and Jeff was Jeff. He was in magazines talking about his life. He was talking about what interests him, what was different about the way he approached it. He was engaging with people directly, and Jeff was passionate about the art of making games, being himself, and if people like to pay him money to do that, fantastic.
The way he dressed, he looked a bit rock starish and hippie-ish as well.
He had long hair and a beard, and he dressed a bit like a hippie, I suppose, which I could relate to, because in the 70s I grew my hair long. Well, we weren't called, well, we were known as hairies then.
He always had those Peruvian jumpers and the animals in there, oh yeah. And the long hair and oh yeah, here he is. Here's the hippie. He had like an Afghan coat, with all sheepskin on the outside and the fluff down the front. Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that.
Very different from the other programmers that he met at those times. Very, very different.
It's somewhere between being very rock star and not rock star at all. I can't quite decide because he will just dress how he likes and speak his mind, and he's very lovely and very open to speaking with everyone. And it is very interesting to see someone who's never really fallen into the trap of wanting to conform to what the industry thinks anyone should be.
Jeff's always just made peace, I think, with living in the sideline. He's never given up on game design as a discipline, as a vocation. It's all very much work, but it is like, you know, this kind of peaceful kind of compromise between like, this is going to be the work, but I'm only going to agree to do this amount of work for something that I really love.
Kind of a bit tempesty when you go down into a tube. I do like the tube shooters.
I've been lucky that so far in my career I've always managed to work on stuff that I want to do, and I guess I just stubbornly want to carry on doing that really. I don't want to sort of compromise that in order to potentially make more money or whatever. I'd say I'm definitely off mainstream. I have kind of a tangential connection to the traditional game dev scene, I think. I want to enjoy what I do. I want to feel happy with the things that I've made, and I want to make things that I want to play with.
That was cool. His dad made nukes, huh? The Commodore PET. It all began. Sir Clive Sinclair's Specky. First game. 3D. 3D is a unique being only a program presents 3D view of a maze itself three-dimensional. The program represents a maze in the form of a cube 11 by 11, 11. You're placed in the lowest level 2 up at the front, and you must get to the exit of level 10 on the back wall, i.e. Z equals 10, Y equals 10. 3D view of your surroundings is generated and displayed along the X, Y, and Z coordinates of your orientation. Use any key. Right, that's a little bit archaic for my taste. His own version of Centipede. Let's see how it works on the old Commodore PET. Oh, this is for the ZX Spectrum. Put it right in the middle there. 10. I'll just leave it right in the middle at 3. Prepare yourself. Looks like a bit of an old Nokia phone game, I'd say. The old ZX Spectrum. Right. Went to Oxford. Area called a scintillation of the lining of the arc. Wow. Commodore VIC-20. Rocks. I need to play rocks. Defender. Let's try the old Jeff Mitchell version of Defender. Oh. Wish you can't play it. This is a clone of the Williams arcade game. Early days. Ratman. First original type of game. Let's give it a shot. Some early shit makes the Jaguar look like. It's got some blood. I like that. Oh, won't he use his hammer? Alright, that's enough. The Gold Commodore and the ZX Spectrum. Andy's attack. First US game. It's Defender. Alright. The early days of Llamasoft. Skate.
When I was in school, I dabbled in lots of various things. I got a skateboard and I was a skater for a while, really enjoyed that. I wasn't even aware of the link between computers and video games, really. And it's only because I walked into this room one day in college and there's one guy sat down the end with this weird thing which looked like a telly on top of a typewriter keyboard. Appeared to be playing some kind of crude game on it, and when I was a bit curious, went over and asked him where did that game come from. He said he types it in. That was the moment that completely changed my life. I really enjoyed the act of programming. I thought that I'd finally found something that I actually had some kind of genuine aptitude for. But out of the whole sixth form college, we only had one machine, which was a Commodore PET. And officially, you had to book up half-hour slots. You could have 1 half-hour slot a day, and that wasn't really enough time for me to get stuff done. I mean, the thing is, back then, the Commodore PET was quite expensive. And I didn't come from a rich family. There's no way that our family could have afforded a computer, and there's no way I individually could afford a computer. I only had pocket money at the time, didn't have a job. And then this item came on the news and showed Clive Sinclair demonstrating the prototype of the ZX80 in some school somewhere. And the idea of actually having your own computer at home was unbelievable. I really, really, really wanted that ZX80. And so eventually got the money together and ordered it. It actually arrived on the same day as my A-level results. And I remember just forgetting all about my A-level results and tearing open the box from Sinclair and spending the rest of the day sat in front of my ZX80, having a wonderful time. The availability of these machines cheap is what really kick-started the software industry, because when other people started having these machines, they wanted software for them. And in fact, that's how I got started, really. I went up to ZX Micro Fair. I had some tapes with some of my simple games I'd done, and I got talking to this one guy on the stand for a company called DK Tronics. And I showed them some stuff, and they said, well, perhaps we could sell it. And I said, that's fantastic. And so I ended up doing some ZX81 programs for them. Nothing caught hold of me the way that programming did. I mean, it was just such a powerful thing. I just wanted to do it all the time. I was actually working quite a heavy schedule. At the time, I was going to Oxford Polytechnic. I was commuting to Oxford from Tadley, which involved like a 7-mile bike ride to the train station, get on the train, another couple of miles, and I'm up a very steep hill to get to the Polytechnic. All day at Polytechnic, back home, and then I was coming back and I was spending my evening hours working on this stuff for DK-Tronics. And then one day at Polytechnic, so I just suddenly felt really, really weak and really sick. And I had like tunnel vision. Then it was obvious that something was not right. And they found out I had some condition called pericarditis, which is where it's an inflammation of the lining of the heart, and the heart rubs against it and becomes distressed. And that took me 6 or 7 months to recover from that. It made me very weak for quite a long period of time. I had to have a lot of rest, and one of the things I could do while incapacitated that way, I could still do my programming. I mean, while I was ill, that's when I did some of the work which led to my first Llamasoft games. Llamasoft was formed originally as a partnership between me and these other guys. I've been hanging out with the son of a guy who owned the local video store in Tadley, and him and his dad, they said, why don't we form a company together and sell some of your games? You've been ill, you know, you've got to look after stuff. We'll look after all the business stuff. And we started doing stuff together. When we first started out, I was doing what everybody else was doing, just copying arcade games. On the VIC-20, I did this game called Defender with an A on the end, because that's how everybody used to avoid copyright back then, so they thought. And then Atari started throwing their weight around and threatening people. We thought we'd better at least make it so it doesn't say Defender anymore. So we changed the name of the game to Andy's Attack. Andy's as in the mountain range. Instead of rescuing humans, you rescued little llamas. It was a pretty crappy version, a chunky character-based scroll, and the ship was the size of a bus and handled about as well. These other guys who had a big deal about they wanted to have 70%. I thought, naively thought, oh, well, maybe that's a good deal. I don't, you know. I mentioned this to my mum. My mum was like, absolutely no way was this going to happen. And she insisted on meeting up with the people, and it was like, it's going to be 50-50 or not at all. But it became apparent they weren't going to negotiate. They wanted to have 70%. So we ended up splitting, quite acrimoniously. And Llamasoft became basically our family business, with starting out with me and being my mum.
Good old mum. Always there for a kid.
Just doing all the programming.
There he is, when we became a hairy. Gotta have tea. Gotta have that L-theanine. Ductor. Let's try it out. Some real early stuff right here. Real early stuff. Look at the Jaguar ears. Grid Runner. The Commodore 64. This is the first Commodore game. Oh, I like the Commodore background. What the hell is this game? Alright. This is real early stuff, you know. Let's try Grid Runner. A lot of hype about Grid Runner, so. Okay. Grid Runner Evolutions.
So yeah, they've got this guy building on what he's done before, trying new things. I don't think he'll be trying to figure out a formula or a grand design that evolves. It'll all be instinct. His gut will be telling him, try this. And then there is that lovely holy moment where it all joins together into one thing. And for Jeff,
It's sort of like Centipede, based off Centipede. But I got to the point where I enjoyed putting my own spin on things. I was no longer content just to try and copy an arcade game. I wanted to do something else. I like the idea of the shooting things creates obstructions which then alter the path of things to come. And that does happen in Grid Runner to an extent. I put lasers and stuff in and made it much more of a space theme, a garden theme. And in Grid Runner, every time the laser pulses, all the obstacles on the field advance one level of evolution, and they've got a maximum of 6 they can go through, and then they turn into a bomb and fall down. It was a nice game. I thought it was quite nice. It took me a week start to finish. And we had a contract to sell the game in the US. I think it was one of the first Commodore shows. And this American guy in a suit came and was looking at what everybody was doing there, and came over to us and said to me, "We like Andy's attack, and could you put that on a cartridge for us to sell in the US?" True to his word, he went back and I figured out how to put the game on a cartridge, and they started selling it, and it sold okay, but it got our foot in the door over there, and they wanted more games. So I made Grid Runner, and I sent out a copy to the guy in the US. And here's what I've just done. I was woken up from sleep by the phone ringing, and I got up, it was like 3 in the morning, something like that. I'm going to go out and see what's what. The phone rings, and the guy goes, "That game's amazing, we've been playing it for like 8 hours, I can't believe how good it is. So you're probably going to make some decent money off this." I'm like, "Oh, okay. And I went back to bed and back to sleep.
Is there any bear out there?
Is that just a dream I had
It's
last
raining
night?
on her hair.
I said I'm going to make some money. And thankfully I've written down on the pad of the phone what had been said. So. And sure enough, they did a great job of selling that game. I think it got to number 1 on at least one of the US software charts at some point. Made us play. That was the point where I realised something was really up. Maybe this is going to work out quite well. We've done so many of them, really. We did Grid Runner on the 8-bits, that was more or less just plain Grid Runner like we had on the VIC-20, except with different resolutions. Then I did Super Grid Runner on the ST and Amiga, that was controlled with a mouse, and it had like a detachable nose cone which you could place in one part of the screen, and then you could move to the other side with the local file, and you could use the right mouse button to retrieve it at any time, a bit like the nose cone in R-Type. Then we had Grid Runner on the Pocket PC. Yeah, the thing there was you had to rescue sheep that were coming down the screen, and if you got killed, then the pieces of your wreckage would start to fall down, but if you managed to guide them onto the back of a sheep, then you get a sheepy save and come back to life. And that actually came from a bug. That came from a bug where if you died, then it would act as if you picked up the sheep when you hit it. And I thought, that started happening quite a bit. I thought, that's actually quite a nice mechanic, so that when you die, you can retrieve yourself.
Good God.
Grid Runner Evolution. There's a lot more stuff going on in there. It's a much more advanced game in some ways. You know, I ripped off sounds from just about all my favourite 1980s arcade games, because I wanted it to sound like a 1980s arcade room. You know that feeling when you walk in and there's just all these sounds going off all around you? That's what I want to sound like playing Grid Runner, because it's supposed to be an evocation of an arcade game that never existed. It's done in the style of a Namco coin-op, so it needs that same kind of atmosphere around it. I think the grid running on the iPhone, it's simpler than some of the other versions, but it's very pure, it's very arcade-like, and it's lovely. I think the most recent version, by taking Grid Runner back to its roots and then just building a few simple enhancements, I think I've come up with a better game. Because your power-up stack, I mean, you start out and you just got to pew, pew, pew out the front, and that gets a bit faster as you shoot things, so you pew, pew, pew a bit faster. And you get various little tiles that power you up, and they may give you 4-way pew, 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 or something like that for a little bit, but you get the stacking effect. So you can have 3 or 4 of these things come together, and then suddenly you're just this intense fire flower of like shots just bursting out and flooding the whole thing. You just feel like a god for a few seconds, and it's nice. So it makes you, it keeps you tied into the game. It makes you feel, it gives you a little rush of like, sort of a little touch of euphoria there to help you along your way.
I like it. I like it a lot. Headbangers Heaven. Right, that's enough of that. Attack of the Mutant Camels. He's obsessed with llamas and camels, I've noticed. It's like another Defender, right? Oh, but big old camels. Right. Laser Zone. There he is. Grid Runner 2. Made back 1983. A long time ago it is. Before I was born. Oh Lord. He was right, I do like the sounds of the game. No, this is a very playable game here. I see how it went well on old Commodore 64. Nice arcadey fun. Right. Matrix. Oh, we got Atari 8-bit. Birmingham, 1983. Oops. This there he is. Try it on the old Atari 8-bit. Oh, it's kind of the Commodore 64. Cookie. Oh baby. Don't understand this game quite very much. A lawn mowing game. First lawnmower simulator. Right. Skip some of these games with him. Oh no, Heathrow.
To me, playing a game is not just about getting to the end and beating the final boss. The actual playing of the game should be the reward in and of itself. I mean, the journey should be the valuable part, not the conclusion. You don't just want to get to the end of the game and say, oh, I've done that, I'll cross it off and put it aside. I want to go, one of my games to be certain that people will come back to and think, oh, I'm going to play that. May not get my high score, may not even get to the end. I want to play it just because I really, really enjoy the experience playing. It's about listening to a music album. You listen to it again and again. You don't just listen to it once, oh, I've heard the lyrics now, I'll put that aside and I'll never listen to it again. You listen to it because it makes you feel good, because it's uplifting, or because it speaks to you in some way. And that's what I want when I'm designing a game now. I want to make an experience which is just makes you smile, which gives you that buzz, which just makes you feel good.
He clearly loved games and came from a place of, Atari and classic coin-ops, and when you think about game developers that learn their craft by riffing on their favorite arcade games at the time, I think Jeff is very much of that school. Like a lot of the games that he was like, well, what happens if you did Asteroids or Missile Command or whatever, but it was sheep and llamas and goats instead of those things, and that's how he made it his own.
One of the things that fascinates me about some of the early games, because they were very constrained by hardware limitations, you could often only have a very small set of rules, but in the very best games, out of that small set of rules, you could get a lot of complex behaviours emerging. I mean, but essentially it's all a feedback loop though, isn't it? It's all about you doing something and the game feeding something back to you. So basically what you're doing when you're creating a game is you're fine-tuning that feedback loop. You're defining what it is, you're defining what the stimulus and response is going to be, and you try and make that satisfying for the player. And that can apply to any game, I think. That essentially that is the core of what's happening. So what I'm doing when I'm trying to make a game, I'm trying to make you feel a particular way. I'm trying to make you feel that way by tuning this loop until it feels really good. There's a point where for me it clicks and it starts to feel nice, and when I feel that, then that's the direction I go in. Balancing and refining that feedback loop and making it feel good is the essence of game design, really. What story you stick on top of that is up to you. For me, game design isn't something that you start out doing and you don't write down the whole design on a piece of paper and submit it to people as a pitch and then go off and hire programmers and make it. It's something that you make as you go along, and it's fine-tuned as you move in different directions. You feel the direction it needs to go in. But it's all about this feedback loop. That's the core of it. So the first things I do when I'm making a game is implement the player and give them a little bit of a world to move around in and implement what they're going to do, be that shooting or jumping or whatever, and play with that and fine-tune that and get the feel for that. And as you do that, then often other little things will suggest themselves and you kind of can build on it and add more stuff to it. It'll just take iteration. You'll just play it and play it and play it and play it, and the bits which you don't like, you'll file off if you like, and the bits which you like, you can enhance. But for me, it's just playing it and playing it and playing it and playing it until I'm satisfied. When I'm working on a game, I will be, the last thing I do at night will be to play the game for an hour or so. Every single night I'll be playing it. Every single night I'll be just going over myself what I like, what I don't like, which direction I need to go in. It's just a lot of hard work like that, really. I was quite guilty in some of my early game designs of like having difficulty because it went like that, and it's not really the most effective way to entertain your users, really. There's level 3 and the liquor ships in Iridis Alpha. Yeah, and the liquor ships were perhaps in the wrong slot. I mean, putting them on level 3 was perhaps not the kindest thing to do. If I was redoing that game now, I would put them a bit further away.
I feel like we don't talk about that game enough. There was some very interesting stuff going on in that game. There was like a split screen thing that was happening, and it was very weird. And again, all of Jeff's games are weird, but they're weird in a way that they're almost kind of challenging you to like understand them. Like it's not clear what you're supposed to be doing, but the genius of them is like, if you just give it 5 minutes, give it 10 minutes, and it'll click, and you go, oh, now I get it.
I learned something about difficulty. Especially, I've always been learning about difficulty. It's very important to allow people some levels of grace to find their way in before you start turning the screws. And then even when you do turn the screws and you've made somebody stagger through a level and they've maybe got like 1 life left, it can be nice to have a level that plateaus a bit or even goes down a bit and gives them a chance to recover and get a few lives back. So the early levels of my games now tend to be a lot less door slammy than they used to be back in the day. Certainly no level 3 liquor ships.
I'm getting into the old light game. This one is in his real hairy phase. This I'm interested in. I can't play it. Lights on. Only hairy would come up with a game like this.
I remember lying in my bedroom in the dark and listening to Pink Floyd. And in my head I would imagine like sort of abstract geometric shapes sort of doing stuff in time to the music. For a long time these abstract visions were just in my head. As I went through school, that kind of went to the back of my mind. And at first when I was programming games, it didn't really occur to me that I could use the computer to do that. One day I was out for a run and I just thought, why don't I try doing, using some of this tech that I've got for making games and make something that's not a game, and why not try and just do a single approximation of what this thing I'd had in mind, this machine to externalise the abstract stuff in your head, to go how you might go about making one of those. And so I came up with this like 1K program which I called Psychedelia. You just have this dot and you move the dot around, you press the button and all these flowing patterns would come out. And you could put symmetry on them, so you could kind of direct this in time to the music. It was lovely, and it blew my mind just how cool this was to play with. And I got my mates around and I said, you've got to try this, and sat them down and put on the Floyd and gave them the joystick, said, just do this, and people really enjoyed it. And it was so nice, it was so pure, it was something else. I felt like I'd broken through into some area where not many people had been working. In fact, people had been working there. It was actually only years later I found out that Atari made the Atari video music in 1977. When I did find other people doing it, I kind of felt validated, really. I felt there is something here that's worth looking at. There is something that's perhaps worth moving forward and looking at in a bit more detail. I felt it was something that was too pure and too good in its own, you know, it's just too pure to be commercialised. I wanted to just give it away. And I did. I gave the original version. I gave away as a listing. I've got it published in magazines. It was a hex listing. You put this thing in. Eventually, we thought, okay, we will do a version for sale. An extended version, which we sold. It wasn't very expensive. We released it, and the reviews were very much polarised. It's probably one of the most divisive things I've ever done, because you had like some people. Well, obviously, you know, they'd been waiting for something like this to come along, and there was, you know, a few reviewers who were really just like got it straight away. There's this one guy who said the review was something like, "I find mere words too cumbersome to describe the brilliance of this concept," or something like that. I'm thinking, well, that's the best review I've ever had, and probably the best review I'm ever likely to get. And then for the same programme, somebody else was saying, "What absolute load of rubbish! What the hell does Minter think he's doing?" So. But I knew I was onto something.
He's embracing the medium in such a radically different way from anybody else. And he's not even sure, I don't think he's even sure about why or how he's doing it.
It's the sort of thing you could put your mum in front of the telly and you wouldn't have to explain it to her. You just put a joystick in her hand and say, waggle that. And instantly, it's like, I get it. I can see what I'm doing, I get it. But by waggling this stick, something's happening on the screen. And, you know, I think that's part of the appeal, because it's certain it would draw people in that wouldn't necessarily normally be into computers at all. I was aware of his games, but like I think it was one of the Atari shows that I actually first saw Jeff's light synths when he was demoing Colour Space at the time. Graphics was something I was really into. And this interactive real-time graphics on a computer, which was something you only ever imagined was something you're going to see on the TV, bringing that onto a home computer, that totally grabbed me. And when the 8-bit version of Colour Space came out, I was totally hooked. Ever since then, it's been all about the light synths for me.
Right. Try out this light synthesizer. Digital narcotics. I like that. Oh, they got like different versions. Wicked cool. They're the original. Alright. Oh, that's bloody brilliant. I'm bloody tripping out right here. And this is worth the $15 in itself, right? Isn't it? No Jeff Minter story. I love it. I bloody love it. Colour space. Light sense on display. 1985. Llamasofties. Check it out. Manchester.
I like going to the Play Expo because it's really nice. People just come up and we can hang out and play some games. Yeah, to me, it's a great privilege when I meet people who actually enjoy the stuff that much. I think it's quite something when you meet somebody and they still remember playing Bloody Attack of the Mutant Camels or Grid Runner, and they'll tell you how much they enjoyed it. I mean, they still remember it after all these years is one thing, but they actually seek you out and tell you about it is entirely another.
One of the lovely things about meeting Jeff is that you could walk up to him and be kind of like, hi, I'm going to talk to you about your games and effectively your work for half an hour. And he's just kind of like, yeah, let's talk about the Jaguar, let's talk about this, here's a project I've tried to make that never got finished.
I've always enjoyed that. One of the things I enjoyed in the old days was going with Llamasoft to the old 8-bit computer shows.
He is very approachable. If you watch Biff's gaming videos channel of his Winter CES program, the Jeff Minter interview, and he just seems like a nice, approachable guy.
For us, it was never really about selling. It was about letting people come up, and I'd be out the front, we'd play games together, and they could chat to us. And it was just a tremendously exciting time, and also it was great fun. I mean, going up to the shows, meeting the people from the other software houses. It was like a big group of mates all having a wonderful time.
All right.
If there was a computer show on in the UK, Jeff and his mum and dad were going to be there. You know, when I was a young lad, I'd always go say hi. And there's so many people that I know today that I still remember from back in the day that were young kids that would turn up on the stand. You know, it's people from all walks of life. So you'd always see a few of the regulars that would be at every show, but, you know, it'd be the excitable kids like myself that it was just like, you know, this is fantastic, I love all this trippy graphic stuff. You know, you'd get people who'd go along and their dad, you know, probably had no interest in computers, and he'd go along and strike up a conversation with Jeff's dad. I remember that distinctly. With Dad, I'd be talking to Jeff's dad about something, you know, that Dad's talked about at the time. It's like, oh, I don't get all this newfangled computer stuff, but, you know, the boys do. You know, Jeff's, you know, he's a pretty quiet guy, as you know, but at a show he would be completely engrossed in, you know, flying one of the light synths or playing one of the games. And he'd get a little bit of a crowd show up just to watch him playing his own games.
I went to a couple of shows at Earl's Court or wherever back in the day, PCW show or something, and I'd go past the Llamasoft stand, but Jeff wasn't there. So, I don't think back then when I was a teenager it would have ever have occurred to me to try and hang out with Jeff Minter. And then when I was in my late 20s, I was working for magazines, and I'd got to interview quite a few big names, so I became a bit more blasé about it. So I'm of the feeling you should, you know, people say you never meet your heroes. I think you should always meet your heroes if you get the chance, because sometimes they turn out to be fantastic.
No one else is Jeff Minter, or could be Jeff Minter. That's just what he was, and that came with a whole bunch of bits and pieces to do with stuff they put in his games. It looked a bit rock-starish and hippie-ish as well, because it was part of what you were buying, I think. And that stuff was always communicated directly to his fans.
I like to do these newsletters. You see the newsletter called Nature of the Beast, and I'd sit down, just write a chatty little newsletter style thing, talking about what I was doing.
One of the first games of his I bought had his address, and he said, for a newsletter, write to. And I thought, yeah, go on then, let's see what this is about. No, not thinking it would be anything. I thought it would just be advertising and stuff, you know. And the first one arrived, I think it was #1. I read it and I went, wow, wow, what? Is this guy for real? Yeah, and then they kept coming. I think I don't remember whether you had to send them stamped addressed envelope. Every time you got one, you sent one back. I think that was the deal, but yeah, he used to write them quite regularly. It was news about how he was developing the games and other things that happened. You know, it just keep you informed. It's just great.
Everyone else was just a company or a product, and Jeff was Jeff. Programming for me started from the inspiration of being a fan of these people like Jeff that were sitting at home making their own games. You'd read about him doing this in the magazines at the time. He used to do these great interviews. They were so vivid, the way that he told the story of what he was up to, what inspired him. And I was thinking, yeah, I could do that. That was just totally different. It was his heart on the page and it was his heart in the game. And that inspired me.
The old Atari ST, eh? Got a space comes to the ST. Had his own zine. He was very punk rock. Let's try out Idris OC. Idris OC. A lot of these games are Defender. Feels like. A lot of these games. Defender. I'd say this gives you the bang for your buck though. All the videos and history. Oh, just transformed into some sort of spider-like creature. One of Star Fox was inspired by that. A nice beautiful house in the valley. Nice place. Commodore 16. Void Runner. Nature of the Beast. Revenge of the Meat and Camels 2. Llamasoft look.
What Jeff Minter has going for him is a style not only inspired by the 1980s, but a look that is inspired by psychedelic art.
The stuff I do, I mean, it's quite fair to call it neo-retro because it takes a lot of the ethos and design philosophy from retro games. But also we can mess around with lots of trippy new stuff and go crazy with particles and all kinds of effects that we couldn't do back in the day. Back in the early days, when the hardware was quite limited, then the scope of your game design was really defined by what the hardware could do and also what you could do with the hardware.
When he's just designing graphics for himself, I think coder art is the kind way to put it.
His games were quite unusual compared to most of the others in the sense that there's so many animals. Because he would have the animals doing things and chasing each other or whatever and blasting each other. I mean, it's not like soldiers or anything. It's animals. Creating a new world where, you know, animals are doing weird stuff.
I sent him some drawings I'd done of a kind of a half man, half goat thing. And it was just doodling. But I just read Brian Aldiss's Heliconia Spring, I think was the first one. And there was about these two races of this sort of humanoid and this sort of half goaty thing, which and they had I believe it was the son was called Batalix. So when I did these drawings anyway, and I put them all onto one sheet and I sent them to Jeff, and I gave him the title of Batalix because it seemed to fit. And I think he must have fallen off his chair when he saw them, because he got in touch with me and he said, "Have I got a brain leak or something?" He said, "This is going to be the title for my next game." And I hadn't told anybody. And I think that's what prompted him to ask me to do the screen. Having this sort of space background with ships and things blowing up. And there had to be some animals, you know. And he liked it so much, he put it in the game.
While this realist aspect is compelling for him as well, you can see the Salvador Dali there.
I was influenced, as I'm sure many of us were, Matthew Smith included, by things like Monty Python. Love Python, so love sticking that kind of abstract, weird humour in the game. It's just part of being British. My games are very British. Somebody said that to me in the talk I gave the other day, and it's true. I am as British as a cup of tea.
Yeah, in the last 20 years, he's obviously been kind of associated with this rave visuals aesthetic.
When that happened with Tempest 2000, when I discovered the visual feedback effect I had in there. And that informed not only stuff in Tempest 2000, but also the stuff that went into the VLM, because that used it extensively.
You play by his mind. And I think, you know, maybe that's part of the success of Jeff as an artist. You know, you're not only you're playing one of his games, but you're inside his head as well.
Eye of the Storm. Time to go into the 90s. Whose very existence was threatened. Andy's attack. Super Grid Runner. Let's see what we got here. Is it on the Amigo? I like the effects. I like it. Very 80s arcade. Let's blast. Oh, that's a nice llama. Oh, it looks great. It looks great. Oh, Lord. Got you, scumbag. Got you, humanoid. A bit derivative, but you know, it's just it's meant his way, it's his vision. He's an artist, not a businessman. He makes what he makes because it comes out of his head. It was on the Atari ST. But it was on the Jaguar platform. Well, that's interesting. The Conics. Photon Storm. He's beginning to produce games for Atari. Oh, this is that Attack of the Mutant Camels they all been talking about. No, it's the same game I played before, but a little bit more pizzazz. Oh, we've seen it before. Atari Panther. It was what was going to come out before the Jaguar. So they started putting out shareware. Okay, this is one I've been wanting to play, Lambtron. I've been seeing clips. It's like Robotron with lambs. I like it. It's cheeky, you know, it's a bit cheeky. It's a bit cheeky, isn't it? Twin stick shooter. I like it. I like it. Get into this. Right. Forward to something like this. Not too hard, like Robotron is. It's satisfying gameplay. I think it's bumped up the difficulty level here. Alright. A little bit of digitised voice. I like it. Excellent game. The shareware gambit. So that was all about the old shareware.
As the 16-bit era advances, we were having difficulty getting our games distributed.
Right.
We'd always relied on getting into distributors to go to WH Smiths and that kind of thing. That was how we sold our games, and we sold some mail order, obviously, but most of them at retail. I loved Robotron, so I'd been working on the Llamasoft style Robotron game, and as I was getting fairly near to completion, I felt it was quite a decent game, and I rang around a few places seeing if they'd be interested in publishing it, and nobody was really interested in it. There wasn't really any market for my type of games. This fun scene that we'd started out in it wasn't like it was disappearing, but it was mutating into something else. It started getting more commercial, and then you had like arcade licenses became more prevalent than film licenses, and then you needed to have more marketing to get into the magazines, and then the distributors would only take you if you had so much of an ad spend every month. And it seemed to me that if you wanted to stay in that scene, then you had to become something other than what you'd been before. And I didn't want to become something other than what I was. And I think I was just being stubborn, basically. I didn't want to give it up. So I'd heard of this thing called shareware. In the early days, shareware was very pure. You actually gave the software away complete, and people paid you if they were getting the value out of it. And I just thought, why don't I try doing that? I got in touch with SD Format, and they said they'd put Llamatron on their cover disc. And so I wrote this famous text file which I put on the disc, where I basically explained the concept. Here is the full copy of Llamasoft. If you like it, then pay us a £5, which was also considerably lower than the price of software, which was about 15-20 quid for a game in those days. And we'll give you a copy of Andy's Attack as well.
Not as
We weren't
well.
the first people to do it by any stretch. It was being done quite a lot earlier in the US, and there were certainly other people doing it in the UK. But I think we were one of the first to be seen to be doing it. Llamatron was probably the real breakthrough game where I actually managed to get a degree of mass appeal.
That was a big stepping stone for me in terms of understanding what motivated Jeff and his kind of genius in video game development, really.
Even if you had seen Robotron, I don't think I would have put the two quite together, you know what I mean? Because Jeff had totally done something unique with it.
Robotron was a ruthless arcade game, and I wanted to make a game that was kind of Robotron-y but was more accessible. The main thing I did was to give the option for the player to have this little droid which followed you around and helped you. The little AI droid would go around and shoot things for you and collect beasties for you and actually really genuinely usefully help you out. And it made that game a lot more accessible to a lot more people without needing the absolute mad skills that you need to do Robotron itself.
Looking at an enemy and going, hang on a minute, am I being chased by an umbrella? And do I have to catch that to make it stop raining? That makes sense, but it wouldn't exist in any other game. But somehow, in the games that Jeff writes, that logic just kind of clicks into place and you go, aha, yes, get umbrella, that stops the rain is bad, the umbrella is sentient, that's fine, now I'm going to go after this telephone.
But if it was just like a load of things being thrown at you, there wouldn't be a lot of entertainment in that. And actually, I'd say Revenge is a little bit like that. Llamatron itself is great in that those things move in specific ways. They've got predictable ways of moving. They're not just things bobbing about. Like items in the game world that have their own like behaviours and characteristics as well.
It's just so fun and so ridiculous, yet somehow completely and utterly makes sense within its own world.
It's a nice blend of Jeff Minter and Robotron. So it's just this beautiful mix.
And people absolutely loved that. People loved the fact that we trusted them to take this game and they could basically test it for themselves. And they loved the game and they sent us money. And it was a time when we weren't making a lot of money, so it really did save our ass at that point. And it was quite moving because loads of people, as well as sending money, they sent letters telling us how much they appreciated it, how much they loved it. And at one point, there was a point when this was all kicking off. I was living in Cumkeek and I had a fax machine. And my fax machine every day would just go with rolls and rolls and rolls and rolls of faxes of my mum just faxing me these letters that were coming in, of people just expressing their joy at having been trusted to pay for this game only if they liked it. And even though people send me more money than I asked for because they thought I deserved it. It was lovely. It was from going through banging your head against the wall with recalcitrant distributors to this outpouring of love was extraordinary.
I like it. We're into the Jaguar phase. We're into the Jaguar phase. Released in late 1993, Atari's final game console was the successor of another machine urging in the timeline. The Panther? No. The Connex multi-system, which was based on the Flare 1 technology, while Atari Jaguar was actually the Flare 2. 32-bit processors leapfrogged the 16-bit technology on the market, but in the end it was not a commercial success. Of course, we gotta play Tempest 2000. It's a Jeff Minter classic. We play Tempest 2000. Look at those graphics. Extraordinary. Let's play. No Jaguar. It's a bit difficult, isn't it? Oh, right. Should have picked an easier level, innit? Oh, perfect laser. I love this music. The digitized voice acting. Why am I speaking like a British man? Well, Jeff Mentor's British. I've disassociated into another personality as well. Game over. We're going to give that another shot on a different play screen. $19.94. Tempest 2000. This is the level I want. The easy one. Let's play this. Let's get it on, right? And now I got the gun gone. I like it. It's trippy like this laser game. Definitely a highlight of the Jaguar. I like the sounds of the game. Very arcadey. That's a nice effect right there. Caught you. Keep missing the power-ups. Great music. Early 90s drum and bass. Brilliant. I know. And caught me again. Took my life's life as well. Oh, got me again. Game over, but that was fun. That was worth it. Llamasoft's later years.
Jeff obviously is brilliant. Like, he's still doing that thing. He's still doing the games.
People remember Llamasoft and the long history, and people sometimes forget that there are two of us here, and you know, these games aren't just Jeff Minter games anymore. It's Llamasoft, and Llamasoft is the pair of us. But it was getting to the point where you need more than one person to do this stuff, really.
When Giles first came along, it was at exactly the right time. So they'd met and they'd become friends online and got chatting, and obviously realised that there was a lot in common because Giles is, you know, is a complete ninja coder.
One thing we have in common with Jeff, I will say, we have an idea in mind. We both like to see it becoming something tangible, something you can touch it or play with it or feel it. For Jeff, it was mostly software. For me, it's also about hardware.
Giles is almost as eccentric and unique as Jeff is, but in his own special way.
Jeff is the kind of person that can solve things in a way that probably most people would not, using unconventional methods maybe, but he gets things done. I'm much more into maybe a more formal approach about how to solve things.
He's this mad Italian coder who has his own particular strengths, and it seems that they fit together quite nicely.
You know, I think our nerdery is well aligned, if you want to put it that way.
And I think without Giles, there would not be as many Jeff Minter games in the world as there are right now.
Now with Giles, Jeff is developing better technology, and that's given him an ability to stay independent. He can just concentrate on the game. He's probably got a deeper level of thought and understanding of game design than he's ever had. That's something I've got a lot of time for Jeff, in that every single game there's something that's a bit new now and pushes stuff forward.
I like doing light synthy stuff, and we decided that since the light synth was quite versatile and could come up with a lot of cool effects, then why not use this to build games in? I mean, actually have that capability as a starting point for making games. At that time, Space Giraffe was the closest integration I'd done of the light synth and the game. The game was literally sitting inside a visualizer effect for all the levels, and I had a very specific design objective to use the psychedelic visuals in the background as part of the difficulty of the game.
So basically, it started to become, if we were more correct to say, a framework. So we called it the Neon Engine.
What he did is, without getting too nerdy about the technical stuff, he came up with this concept of what you call a virtual machine. And the idea of a virtual machine is a layer of software. I mean, much like, I guess these days you've got things like Unreal Engine or Unity. So you've got a platform where you code to the platform, but then that underneath translates to the hardware it's on.
And it makes my life easier because I just code to the Neon Engine, and he makes sure that it works no matter where it gets deployed. So we had like a subset on the Vita, we've got it on the PS4, we've got it on the Xbox One, we've got it on the PC.
He's not created like an engine that just does one thing. He's created an editor that allows him to make very varied things, which is great. It's in Space Draft, it's in Grid Runner Revolutions, it's in every game since then as well. That's like the engine of what he makes today, like in a real literal sense as well.
I think this is a continuation of a journey that's been going on for 30, 40 years. There's hardly been a point when Jeff's made a computer game where he's not made a visualizer, and I don't ever want that to stop. You know, and whatever feeds whatever, I don't care as long as Jeff gets to keep making the thing, because they just keep getting better. He's an artist that just gets more and more powerful, you know? There shouldn't be like, oh yeah, you can retire now. There's a new thing, get on it. Yeah, like, job's not done.
I like it. Hot and neon. The upcoming film, Hot and Neon.
The first Jeff Minter game I bought was a game called Abductor. The aliens would swirl in from the top and swoop down, and you had to shoot them. And it reminded me of the arcade games I would play when we were on vacation with the family at the beach, you know, like Space Invaders and Galaga and stuff like that. That had that simple arcade experience that I liked. So I was familiar with Llamasoft and Jeff Minter's name. So when Gridwire came out, I'm like, well, of course, I'm on board for that. And that was the one. That was the game. This game, there's something about it that was transformative. This person who made this game understood all the things I loved about arcade games. I played it to death. When I became a filmmaker, I wanted to make a film about video games because the first proper job I had was in video games. I was a video game graphic designer in the mid to late 80s. It would be my first career. I was super nostalgic for it. And the difference between the way it is now and the way it was then, I thought there was a story there. So I cast about for a story. A friend of mine who I used to work with in the games industry said, well, you should do a film about Jeff. Jeff's career spans the history of like the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. That's generations of like hardware technology and game development, and like the business has evolved so many times. Jeff can be the constant throughout that story. Each game shows you a snapshot of history at that time, and it's a unique opportunity to show the development of an artist and the development of the medium that he's working in, and encapsulating that in the story of a guy's struggle to get his art out into the world. That was a sketch that I went into production with. What happened through those interviews, something much more compelling to me emerged out of it. I was aware that Jeff had done a light synth. Light synth has been like Jeff's passion project since the early 80s. And then I didn't make the connection at first. So Jeff would have these parties at the farm every weekend at one point, and they were doing this thing with this light synthesizer. One of them would DJ, and they would party all night till the sun came up. And Jeff talked about it in the context of how they became really close friends during this, and it was a magical time that could never be repeated kind of thing. But what he was really telling me was about this project he and his friends developed and presented to Microsoft. A project that would change everything Jeff did for the rest of his career. What they were making was something Jeff would call neon. And neon is something that defines Jeff, and the relationship Jeff has with his fans. You know, it meant something. I wanted to find out what that was. A lot of people understand that they feel connected to a musician or a singer. Lots of people feel connected to an actor or a writer. But it's rare to say that people feel connected to a video game designer. And I met a bunch of people who all said it and meant it in a way that was real, in a way that was completely unexpected to me. I think the story of Neon is a story about somebody who never gave up. And I think we all need that.
when I was maybe 13 or maybe even younger than that. I can remember lying in the dark, listening to music, and in my head I would imagine like sort of abstract geometric shapes sort of doing stuff in time to the music. I was like 14 years old, sitting there daydreaming in my English class. You know, people daydream about being a rock star and playing the guitar on the stage. I was daydreaming about doing something I didn't quite know what, but with big screens with stuff happening on them and lights going off. It's just there as part of my imagination. It's a kind of voluntary synesthesia, maybe you'd call it. And I always wanted one day to make a machine that would let me somehow perform these things that I have in my head and put them out on a screen for other people to see. After I'd been doing video games for a while, I just thought, why don't I try making this light instrument? And that became this 4-player interactive light synth. And that could have been the start of something extraordinary. The main problem was that I could never sell it, because nobody knows they want it, and they won't know they want it until they've actually tried it. So in the end, the only way I've been able to develop the techniques is by bringing it into video games.
Jeff's story ends up being kind of like a road trip through video game history, but the road keeps going. I mean, this guy's been around for so long. Aren't you curious to know why?
Very cool, very cool. The yak is back. I guess that's all of it. My $15 worth. Gold Master Series. Grid Runner. Woodrunner. Idris Alpha, Alex, Color Space, Molly Llama, Psychedelic. Played a lot of them. We played a lot of them. Laser Zone. Let's finish it off with the very last game, the Grid Runner. The 2023 Grid Runner. Grid Runner Remastered. Oh, it looks interesting already. Oh, that looks brilliant. Brilliant. I like it. Very cool, very cool. Oh, I like it. I had a great time going through the life and story of Jeff Minter. Truly avant-garde artist in the video game space. No one like him, quite frankly. And the white light is Jeff Minter. Oh, right. Two artists. Any sense of the word. Alright. And that's all. That's the Jeff Minter story.